Hey everyone, I'm Fred Tolan with INVISIO, and this is one in a series of online videos that will spotlight our tactical communication and hearing protection products, as well as provide tips and tricks for the users. In this video, we'll be covering the INVISIO V50 Gen II control unit. The V50 is capable of connecting into practically any type of communication device, to include headsets, radios, intercom systems, and even mobile phones. It's 20-meter submersible, has voice prompts to help guide the user, and can utilize an internal AA battery for power, unlike our other control units which rely on connected communication devices and accessories for power. It's small, lightweight, and rugged, utilizes a low-level energy Bluetooth for wireless capabilities, and it's Vox capable. So let's get into the nomenclature of the V50. We'll start with the headset port. The headset port will fit any INVISIO in-the-ear or over-the-ear headset, to include some in-service legacy headsets. We also have adapters for most third-party headsets if that's needed. Next up, we have two COM ports, COM 1 and COM 2. Each COM port can monitor 2 audio streams, which means that you can listen to 4 channels at one time on this device. Next up, we have the push-to-talks, or PTTs. There's 4 of them that will allow you to communicate on multiple devices. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, some devices, like a mobile phone, require 2 PTTs to operate. You'd need one to talk and the other one to answer the phone or hang up. Next up, we have the mode button. We use that to change the way audio is pushed to the headset. Next, we have the battery compartment. That's where I would insert a AA battery if I needed to provide power. Now, it's important to note that if I'm connected to a radio or something that does push power and I also have a battery inserted, it's going to pull power from the radio first and save the power from the battery. And lastly, we have the MOLLE clip, which is on the back, and it can be rotated 90 degrees depending on how you want to wear it on your kit. So let's go ahead and connect the headset. Now, all of our connectors are designed to only go in one way to the system. You just have to match up the red dots. If you're in a dark environment, you just have to rotate it until it goes into place and you'll be good to go. Now, there's no particular way that you have to connect into the system, but having the headset inserted first is going to allow you to hear the various tones and beeps that the system will give you, which will guide you. So let's go ahead and power this thing up. The first thing I need to do is determine whether or not I need a battery. Now, if I was plugging in a radio, I wouldn't, because that's going to push power to it. But if I'm plugging into like a cell phone, which doesn't push power, I would need to insert a battery. The first thing I'll need to do is unscrew the battery cap, insert a AA battery, positive side facing down, and then go ahead and screw the cap back on until it's nice and snug. Once the battery is in place, I just have to hold the mode button until an audio tone is heard. Once this is done, the hear-through will kick in, which we'll talk more about later, and the system will be powered on. If later I decide that I don't need battery power, I can go ahead and turn it off by holding down the mode button until I get 2 beeps, followed by a tone sequence of 4 beeps. The first 2 beeps is going to let me know the hear-through is off, and the tone sequence of 4 beeps lets me know that the system is off. Now, if I'm using a battery, a timer starts in the system. If I don't touch any PTTs or connect or disconnect any cables for 2 hours, I'm going to get 1 beep followed by the voice prompt, "Shut down imminent." If I don't touch anything for the next 20 seconds, it'll shut that battery down. This will make sure that you're not running through batteries if you forget to turn it off. Now, for this video, we're not going to need a battery because we're going to be plugging in a standard ICOM radio. So just like the headset cable, it's got the red dot on it. I just want to go ahead and insert this into COM port 1. Now all we have to do is turn the radio on. After you do this, you'll immediately experience INVISIO's 360-degree situational awareness, which will allow you to tell where a sound is coming from, just as if you weren't wearing anything. So if I have something behind me on my left and 10 feet in the air, I'm going to immediately recognize that it's behind me on my left and 10 feet in the air, and I'll be able to take evasive action if necessary. Now, there are 3 settings to our hear-through. The first one, and the default when you turn the system on, is natural. In this mode, you're going to hear things pretty much the way you hear them if you're wearing nothing at all. Now, if I go ahead and quickly press and release, or what I like to call pop, the mode button, you're going to go into enhanced hearing mode. You're now hearing things 10 decibels greater than you could before. You just got a superpower. If you were in the woods, you'd be able to hear things you might not hear before. Leaves rustling, sticks snapping. If you were about to make entry on a room, you'd be able to hear movement and conversations. The benefit of this cannot be overstated. If I go ahead and pop that mode button again, it's going to go into comfort mode. This is 10 decibels less than natural. In this mode, the system uses a noise reduction algorithm to reduce background noise and preserve speech. You would want to use this in a constant high noise environment so you could have comfortable face-to-face conversations without causing ear fatigue. You can continue to cycle through those modes: natural, enhanced, comfort, natural, until you find the one that suits your needs. Now, if you don't want to use the hear-through, you don't have to. All you need to do is hold down the mode button until you hear 2 beeps, and the hear-through will be off. Now, it's important to know that if you're using battery to power the device, it's going to turn the hear-through off first. So you need to hold the mode button for 2 beeps, but in the tone sequence of 4 beeps lets me know that the system is off. If you do turn off the hear-through, it will in no way affect your received transmissions. It just turns off the hear-through mics. So if you're in an environment where you don't need to be aware of your surroundings, but you do need to monitor your radio, you can do that by turning off the hear-through. If you decide that you want to turn the hear-through back on, just hold that mode button until you get an audio tone, and the system will be back on. Now let's talk about the way audio is received by the system. If I have my single net radio in COM port 1, everything is going to come in stereo, so I'm going to be hearing it in both ears. If I then connect another single net radio into COM port 2, it's going to split that audio. Radio 1 is going to go to my left ear, and radio 2 is going to go to my right ear. This is going to allow me to easily distinguish who I'm communicating with at all times. One of the features of this V50 is the removal of constant radio noise. If no one's actively transmitting, you're not going to get any additional sounds from the radio. It's going to get rid of that white ambient noise you're used to hearing. It's also programmed with enhanced hearing protection. It won't allow any sounds over a predefined limit to enter your headset. It also has environmental adaptation. The system will adapt to your surroundings. So if you're in a quiet environment and you move into a loud one, it's going to raise the volume of your received transmissions. Vice versa, if I go from a loud environment to a quiet environment, it's going to go ahead and lower the volume of those received transmissions. This is going to allow you to hear what you need to hear in any situation. Now let's go ahead and cover the logic that the system uses to assign PTTs to connected devices. So if I go ahead and connect a radio into COM port 1, it's going to assign the first available PTT, which is PTT 1. If I then connect a second radio into COM port 2, it's going to use the next available PTT, which is PTT 2. Now, if this was a dual net radio, and I plugged it into COM port 1, net A would be PTT 1, and net B would be PTT 2. Then radio 2 would go into COM port 2, and it would assign PTT 3 to that radio. Understanding how this logic works can help you set your kit up. For example, let's say I want to use a radio and I also want to use a cell phone cable. Now, we talked about it earlier. A cell phone requires 2 buttons to operate, one to talk and another one to answer the phone or hang up. Well, if I plug my radio into COM port 1, it's going to assign the first available PTT, which is PTT 1. If I then connect my cell phone cable into COM port 2, it's going to assign PTT 2 to talk and PTT 3 to answer or hang up. Now that'll work, but if I put the cell phone cable into COM port 1, PTT 1 will be used to talk and PTT 2 will be used to answer or hang up. I then put my radio into COM port 2 and it will assign PTT 3 for that radio. I now have all my phone on one side of the V50 and all my radios on the other side of the V50. Now you don't have to do it this way, it comes down to preference, but that's the way I would do it. So now we know how PTTs are assigned, but let's talk about the way audio is received. As I stated earlier, if I have one single net radio in COM port 1, all my transmissions are going to come through in stereo. If I put another radio into COM port 2, it's going to split that audio. The primary audio is going to go to my left ear, and the alternate is going to go to my right ear. But what if I don't want it to be split? Well, we have you covered. If you want it in stereo with multiple radios, we can do that. We do this through a simple button combination. Hold mode, pop PTT 2, release mode. Now that cadence is important because if you hold the mode button for too long, the system's going to think you're trying to turn off the hear-through. So if I do that, hold mode, pop PTT 2, release, you're now going to be getting all transmissions from all connected devices in stereo mode. You'll hear 1 beep to let you know it worked. Now, as a general rule, 1 beep means that you've changed something from default, and 2 beeps means that you put it back to default. If I later decide I want split audio again, hold mode, pop PT2, release mode. If I later decide that I don't want it in stereo and I want it split audio again, all I need to do is repeat the process. hold mode, pop PTT2, release. I'll hear 2 beeps letting me know that it's back to split audio. And just let me go ahead and reiterate that you don't want to hold the mode button for too long before you hit that associated PTT, because it will think you're trying to turn off that hear-through. So the cadence we're looking for is hold, pop, release. Next up is mute all radios mode. Now, if I need to focus on a task at hand and I don't want the constant radio chatter coming into my earpieces, I can go ahead and mute all connected radios by 20 decibels. I do this by holding mode, popping PTT1, and releasing mode. All connected communication devices will now be lowered by 20 decibels without ever having to reach for my radio. To go back to normal, all I have to do is hit any button on the control unit and it'll go back to default. Similar to mute all radios is monitor single radio. So let's say I'm connected to multiple devices, but I just want to listen to one radio at full volume and I want to lower the volume of the other ones. This one's similar to mute all radios with a slight difference. The radio that I want to monitor is the button that I'm going to push. So radio 1, PTT1, if I want to monitor that, I'm going to hold mode and then hold PTT1. This time I'm going to get a voice prompt that's going to say focus COM1, and the volume of all the other radios except that one will be lowered. Reverting to normal for this one is easy. All you have to do is push any PTT of any muted radio and it will default to normal. The last audio configuration we're going to cover is VOX, or voice operated transmission, and this one's about as simple as it gets. If I want to transmit by just using my voice and not pushing a PTT, all I need to do is pop the PTT associated with that device. So if I want COM1 PTT1 to be voice operated, I just pop PTT1 and it will be. Now, while this feature is available in all our control units, you will have to have it enabled in the cable when you order it. The last thing we're going to cover is care and maintenance of your V50. It's pretty simple. Wipe it down, rinse it, dry it. First thing you want to do is get rid of any residual sand or dirt. It's best to use a lint-free cloth. Just moisten it and wipe off the exterior. You may be good to go there. But if you want to, you can go ahead and rinse it under water or dunk it in a bucket if you need to. Remember, this thing's 20-meter submersible, so you don't have to worry about getting it wet. Just don't use high-pressure water because you don't want to damage the system. Now all you need to do is let it dry. You can let it air dry or you can use canned air, but do not use an air compressor. Air compressors contain moisture and rust, which can damage your system. If you're in a saltwater environment, it's vital you conduct a freshwater rinse. Salt is not your friend. It can build up on the system and over time cause your cables to become seized. It doesn't take long, so make sure you're doing this, especially when salt is at play. When you're storing your V50, make sure it's in a dry, ventilated area and try not to keep any excess weight on it if you can. You can leave the cables in or disconnect them, but if you do disconnect them, make sure you're pulling them from the connector and not from the cable. It's also recommended that you remove the battery when storing the V50 if there was one in it. And that'll do it for this video covering the INVISIO V50 Gen II control unit. We hope you found it helpful and informative. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our website, and thank you for watching.